Software Architecture and Strategy with Rockford, Lhotka.
The Azure and Devops podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using the latest in .NET, Azure, AI, and DevOps. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. The show is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a full-service software architecture and engineering firm. Find them at www.clearmeasure.com. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. And let's get straight into the interview. My guest today on the show is Rockford, Lhotka. He's the Vice President of Strategy at Xebia Microsoft Services. And there, Rocky leads the vision and direction of the company's software development solutions and services. He brings extensive expertise in framework design and implementations, distributed systems architecture, cloud, and container technologies, and helps clients achieve their business goals and deliver value to the customers. He's also the creator of CSLA NET, a open source development framework, been around for a long time, and it enables developers to build scalable and maintainable and secure object-oriented applications. He's also an accomplished author. He's written multiple books on various subjects, including CSLA and otherwise, and he frequently shares his insights at major conferences worldwide. He's also a member of the Microsoft Regional Director Group and has been awarded from Microsoft the Most Valuable Professional Award for many, many years. He's also a co-chair of Visual Studio Live, as well as chair of the Cloud and Containers Live conferences, and his passion lies in advancing the software industry and empowering developers to create better software. Well, Rocky, thanks for coming back on the show, a multi-time repeat guest. How are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I like to make sure that the listeners understand the level of expert that they're actually listening to, just the number of years of experience, because we have with the growth of our industry so many software engineers who are still in the first 10 years of the career. But if we were to kind of pause a little bit and go back, what are the high points in your career that you remember that were kind of instrumental in steering you towards what your career has become?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I think back to the beginning of my career. It was in the 1980s, and the U.S. at the time, there was kind of a recession going on, and I'm in Minnesota. That's where I'm from, and at that time, a lot of big computing companies, All Data Corporation and Honeywell and some others were headquartered here, and massive layoffs. And so here I am, right out of university trying to find a job, and that was quite a struggle. And I don't think that part has changed. I'm guessing that it still is a challenge at times for folks to even get their first job. But I was fortunate in that my very first job, I got working for a company that was called, at the time, an ISV. I think that term still gets used occasionally, but independent software vendor. And basically it was this little company, these days we might call it a startup even, that was building software to dispatch and manage the delivery of concrete, ready mix, the trucks that come to your freeway or your basement or whatever, and boy, this was the first of a couple jobs that were like this, where you get exposed to just so much stuff. Just from, and not just the technology, although that was a lot of it too. But, like, how do people do order entry and sit there and look up products and take it, and how do they, in this case, dispatch trucks, and, how payments and invoicing. And I mean, the software that we were working on did all of it. It was just what a phenomenal. I look back on that, and I didn't appreciate it at the time necessarily, because some of it was, like any work, it's frustrating and whatever else. But yeah, I look back on that and I'm like, man, I could not have asked for a better first job,
Nice.
just because of the insights in how people, like real people really use software,
I can imagine somebody like running into where you were. Rocky, it's not coming up. We're trying to load this truck. What's going on? It's not working.
Yeah, and you're dealing with everything from. I grew up in rural Minnesota, and and in fact that's where I am now, physically right at the moment. And, I think we've got a truck here, that delivers concrete. So there's everything from that scale to our, at the time, this was in the, again, late 80s. When I worked there, our largest client was one of the big companies in Los Angeles, because at that point they were pouring some of the really big freeways that we all take for granted now. But they were literally coming into existence at that point. And they had 3,000 trucks, and they had to have a truck show up every 30 seconds to meet their contract. And
wow.
yeah. So when you say the truck's not showing up, it was a big deal.
For sure. Well, and I think what's changed, that's software exists to help us do things, to facilitate processes, and ultimately all the computer processing power and the data ends up connecting back with the real world. There's so many, there's a lot of software that you look at websites and social media where, there's some type of software that's disconnected from the real world, where the destination is just, a social media post or a blog post, and that's it. But that's not business software. Business software always connects with something physical, moving, or doing something still.
Yeah, I think so. And I am torn between going a couple different directions in this conversation, but I can't resist. So one of them is, for many, many years, I worked at a company called Magenic, and we had an office in San Francisco. And the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, I worked with and had beers with people that would vehemently disagree with what you said, that all this real world stuff, that's the old economy. And I'm like thinking, that is just so divorced from any sense of reality that I live in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm with you. Yes, at the end of the day, but even the social media, I mean, you said what's changed, and if you think about business software, it really hasn't changed. I mean, the user experience used to be green screens, and now it's graphics, and but at the end of the day, somebody is sitting there, with a headset on, talking to a customer, taking an order,
Right.
And maybe they're more productive with modern software. Maybe they're not, because we did some really cool stuff, I think. Even back at that point. But what's really changed, I think, is the software got so cheap. Not that it's cheap, but software got enough cheaper that we use software for things that 30, 40 years ago we never would have dreamt of, because it was just too expensive.
Yeah. Good point. When I was a teenager, I had a job at Taco Bell, and at the time it was like you have to mash the buttons kind of hard to on the old style computer to taco, burrito, all that stuff. And now I went into Taco Bell a few weeks ago, and there was no person at the register. There was this like self order thing, or order with our app, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to put my order in this way. And there were some other people waiting in line, and I looked at them, I'm thinking, the throughput of the order entry line, I think it would have been faster with a person behind the register, just like, 2 tacos, burritos, gotcha, okay, here's your change. Even if it was just swipe a credit card. So it's different, but ultimately, what do I want? I want a taco. And you better put a taco in that bag, because that's why I came here. So
it is interesting to me, because there's some parts of our world would have literally been impossible, around 1990, give or take. But a lot of it is actually due to material science and miniaturization and things like that. And but on the flip side, to take an analog to your example about Taco Bell, I fly a few times a year over to Europe, and I often fly through Amsterdam because just coming from Minnesota, that's a hub. It's easy to go through there. Yeah. And when I literally stop in Amsterdam, sometimes I will go take a train, and to get there's a Burger King. And not that that's the best food in the world.
Sure, yeah.
But they have a kiosk, just like you're talking about. And there, is it faster? Probably not. However, you think Amsterdam is literally a global hub, right? For people coming from all over Europe and the Americas and India and, you name it. Rather than trying to have some poor teenager understand mashed up English or Dutch, countries all over the world, you just tell the kiosk to speak in your language. And so, I mean, that's just magic.
Yeah.
Who would have dreamt of such a thing? Science fiction authors and Star Trek. Right. I mean, it would have seemed impossible, 30 years ago.
That's right. And it's real. And I have fun with my kids because I just use the Copilot app on the iPhone, and my daughter, she's in musical theater, and she was kind of trying to practice a Western Russian accent. And I just told the Copilot voice mode, speak to me in English, but use a Western Russia accent for everything that I ask from this point forward. And it did. And
wow.
Now, was it correct? I don't know, but it fooled us, So.
Yeah, to the uneducated ear.
Right. But even with the advances in AI, it can do certain things now, and people are hoping that it can do certain things at some point in the future. I know you've thought about this, talked a lot about it. Where do you see it actually changing or influencing how you make decisions about software architecture? Like, are there certain layers that are going to be less, or are already becoming less relevant because we can do that a different way? I see chatbots popping up, but I don't know. Is that it?
I think there's two perspectives here. One is looking at something like business software, and I don't think that AI is going to fundamentally change the architecture there at all. I think starting in around 1997, 96 with Microsoft Transaction Server and Java Beans and some other, that was there was like a 3-year period where everything changed. Where prior to that point, we were struggling with scalability and security and trying to distribute software rather than talking directly to databases, have some sort of broker machine, which we now call an app server, or maybe the cloud in between. And the tech press prior to 96, there were always articles that you could read about how such and such big company just tried to implement this big project and they failed because of technical reasons, because they literally had to invent their own networking protocols and things at that level. After 1996, 97, in that time frame, the narrative completely changed because vendors like PowerSoft and Microsoft and Sun at the time, because they owned Java, had created these tools that just worked. And were they perfect? No, of course not. But they worked. And all of a sudden, you could build what we now call a 3-tier application, and it would succeed. There was not a technical barrier. The barriers all of a sudden were business barriers or people barriers or process barriers, or, back then we didn't have all the luxuries that we have now, like, Git and other modern source control or all these unit testing frameworks. And none of that existed at the time. And I don't think it could have existed because prior to that point, we were all fighting with such basic technical challenges that we couldn't even raise our head up, and all of a sudden you get that abstraction on the back end. And then we could raise our head up and go, oh man, now that we're not dealing with that, I wish that I could improve my process,
Yeah.
And, and that's not the only, pivot point in our industry, but that was a big one. Even though it was invisible to end users, to us as developers, that time frame in the mid 90s was just transformative.
Yeah. So for business applications, you've got your CSLA .NET framework, just tons of capabilities in there. And are there certain capabilities in CSLA .NET where it seems like every application that you look at, you're thinking, why would I ever hand code that? I'm just going to use this as a library. Or maybe it's not in CSLA, but some other library, or things that you used to do, but now it's like, you'd be crazy to build that yourself. Just plug in the pattern.
Oh, tons of that. Oh yeah. And yes, to CSLA, there's like you said, it does a lot of things. And every time I try to write something without CSLA, I'm like, man, why am I rewriting this code? I wrote it. It's in CSLA. I should be just using that,
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just that. I mean, you look at, just the wide array of open source packages in NuGet, or NPM and the stuff that comes from vendors too. But like Newtonsoft, for JSON.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the premier way of handling that. And it's like, why would you ever write your own JSON parser when such a great tool already exists? And, now Microsoft's built-in JSON tool is getting close. For most of us, it works fine. I'm sure there are still folks where Newtonsoft did extraordinary things that are not yet being done. But
well, they hired James Newton.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Created
exactly. It's
that's a good strategy.
But Jim Newkirk too, same thing. And created the unit testing and that still exists. NUnit, and MS test, but now there's all sorts of other innovative ways of thinking about testing. Would you? And so here's the thing though, right? So for most of us, the answer is no. Why would I ever write my own JSON parser or my own unit test thing or my own, CSLA has this network abstraction and a rules engine. I mean, why would you write your own? On the other hand, and that's true for most people, on the other hand, that stuff is fun for some of us. And sometimes you bump your head against a problem over and over again, and you're like, man, I could do this better. You should. I mean, that would be my other answer to this question is, sure, of course you should. If you keep bumping up against a problem over and over again, and you come up with a solution, and you're like, if I just took the effort to genericize this solution, it could apply to a lot of other people. And I mean, literally, that's the origin of CSLA, for example. I would bet you it's the origin for most open source projects. In fact, we kind of know that's the origin of even Linux itself, right? It's like, I love Unix, but it's too expensive, and on I think I shall create my own.
Right.
We need people doing that too. That our industry. Whether you do or don't believe in open source, although I think everybody tends to these days, but I mean that avenue it just can have such an amazing impact on the industry and your individual career, but also all the people that use your tool. I mean, that's one of the biggest motivators for me, because I've been doing CSLA for 28 years, I think, at this point. One of the biggest motivators is that over all those years, I've had people come up and say, I was able to do this thing thanks to CSLA. or I built my career, or, and the reverse is true too. I've had people come up and say, man, you made the dumbest decisions. I would have done it completely different. To which my answer is always, you should, by all means, right? The CSLA has very little competition out there. It's just a space where most people apparently don't choose to try and solve this problem about rules. Is it the best way to do it in the world? I'm sure it is not. And so, somebody out there hopefully is, like, oh, I've got this fantastic idea. Well, they should absolutely be building on that and make the world a better place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned various libraries, and it made me think, okay, for the person who is earlier in his career, where does one go to just become aware of all the different libraries that you could possibly use and what they're good for? Or I remember the Patterns of Enterprise Application book a long time ago, I believe, and design patterns books and available architecture patterns that might be, decades old at this point in time, but just the awareness of, well, what are the different architectures and the architectural elements that I have available to choose from? How does one become aware of what's available these days?
Yeah, I don't have a great answer. I think because I'm not in my 20s. And the world has changed. When I was at that point in my career, I would go to Borders or Barnes and Noble, because this predates Amazon or any of this stuff. And on a Saturday afternoon, in Minnesota, it's snowing outside. So I would just go, because those stores, and I think Barnes and Nobles still exist, and they probably still have comfy chairs. And I would go grab several books off the shelf and just thumb through them, and go, oh, yeah. And if I found something really compelling, I would often buy the book. Otherwise, sometimes I would just put the book back on the shelf, but books aren't a thing anymore. I mean, not that they don't exist, but I mean, it's,
yeah,
it's, so the answer, I'm going to be a politician and take your question, and answer a different question, which is,
sure.
How do I stay current or at least try to stay current with what's going on? And, boy, these days it's a lot of, I have an RSS reader. I use Feedly, and I have it aimed at, the new stack and, Microsoft, blogs and, just a whole bunch of, I don't even know. I've built up my library of, feeds over the years. And so I read that every day. Alvin Ashcroft does a summary, aggregate, blog deal. Invaluable, absolutely invaluable. For many years, there was a guy in the UK who did one, but he appears to have stopped, which is unfortunate, because it was the Morning Brew, I think it was, or something like that. But it was absolutely phenomenal. Anyway, I rely heavily on that. I rely on Blue Sky, Mastodon. Again, curated feeds. I know those things can get out of control in become full of politics or whatever else.
Yeah.
Which is all fine. But if you curate your feeds, or who you follow, or in both Mastodon and Blue Sky let you create lists, and so you can create. So I do. I have politics lists and I have tech lists. You know what I mean? And so. Every day I check the tech lists, just skim through, and it's getting better. People, we had Twitter was a unified location for most of us to collect all that, and
for a while.
Now there's any hope of unification. I think still exists, and it's around either Mastodon or Blue Sky at this point. At least that's my opinion. Both of them are pretty vibrant, and I just try stuff. You just try stuff. When you run into a problem, then you go searching on NuGet or just the web or Ask Copilot. And sometimes there's no packages out there. Sometimes there's one or two. Sometimes there's a ton of packages because it's a problem lots of people have solved and said, oh, I'll just throw this on GitHub, From a curated perspective, though, I do think, following people on those platforms that are actually doing stuff and are talking about it. And and if I may, I'll stand on a soapbox here for a moment. And that is that I have worked with such smart people over, my career. I'll just pick on the last 10 or 20 years. And I mean, just some amazingly smart people that are out there doing stuff. And, I'll end up in a conversation over coffee or lunch or whatever, and they'll be talking about what they did and how they solved it and how they found this package and whatever else it is. And like, man, you should write a blog post about that. And they're like, oh no, nobody wants to hear what I want to say. I'm like, that is not true. That is not true, right? And if you don't want to invest in blogging, because I get that that's like a big or can be a scary thing. That's what Blue Sky or Mastodon's for. Just say, hey, I found this NuGet package that made my life way better, and I met my deadlines, and
the microblogging and low impact, easy, and you do that consistently over time, and people are like, wow, I'm gonna start following Jeffrey, because Jeffrey is a consistent source for some pretty cool insights. And I mean, even if your goal isn't to become an internet personality, you're still helping a lot of people. Right. Absolutely. And people have found their next role that way. They found their next coworker that way. All kinds of connections. Only positive outcomes.
Right. So, I mean, sorry, you just made me think of something though, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
From like a career perspective, you're talking about finding that first and maybe even the second job can be really hard. But at least in my career, I've only, I think twice have I ever done an actual like job search. But one was the very beginning to find my very first job. And that led to my second job. And then I did a job search to find my third job. And I've never searched since. It's always been, like you said, connections, people that I, have met and interacted with, become friends or colleagues, respected peers, whatever, over the years. And it's like, sometimes you're not even looking for a job, and somebody that is like, hey, you'd be perfect for this thing, that to me should be a goal for everybody. Is that you make some level of community connections and interconnectedness, so that you're able to leverage, and I don't mean that in a cynical way, but leverage those relationships to help yourself or to help them.
Well, I always like to describe the trait of an expert as one who teaches or one who shares, because and so many young programmers aspire to become an expert, but if they never share and nobody ever sees the expertise, the word expert cannot be bestowed on oneself. I think it has to be used as a descriptive term of someone else. And if you never share, like even scientists and researchers publishing papers, whatever the format is, I've figured something out, I've learned something, now let me share it in some sort of medium, and then other people benefit from it and say, wow, this person figured something out and really helped me. They're an expert in that thing.
Yep. And I think I agree with you 100%. And I think part of it's just an attitude. I mean, especially in the software industry, it is not a zero-sum game. So much room for growth at an individual, but also at an industry level, that helping other people almost invariably helps you. And hoarding knowledge, I guess it depends on what you're looking for. If you want to, like you said, live a quiet, private life where nobody knows that, or the only people that know you're valuable is your boss, because they can't fire you because you have, invaluable knowledge. At which point, if I'm your boss, I'm going to be trying desperately to figure out how to get rid of you because bus termination errors. Is that still a joke?
The bus factor.
Of course, it's we can't let you get hit by a bus, right? That's
Right.
But it also means you can never go on vacation. You can't advance your career. I mean, it's a whole
stuck.
negative. It's your stock, and who want? Well, I was about to say who wants that, but some people do. I understand, but I think most people don't. And the way I don't know. It's. But I think at the end of the day, that's the thing. We're lucky, fortunate, whatever term you want to use, in that for decades now, and I think into the future, we are in a profession and an industry that is vibrant and growing and changing in ways that continues to be exciting, and and thus is not a zero-sum game, right? There's just so much potential all around us.
Well, I want to end with a strategy question, maybe even a forward-looking question, because you're a executive leader at a effectively a professional services in the technology sector. And so you have to keep your organization really, really good at building software and changing it and whatnot. Going into the future, how are you, what kind of predictions are you making? How are you preparing? How do you think things are changing? And what does that mean for you and your leadership and your strategic decisions and all that goes into all the predictions of, are we going to be hand coding in the same way we are? We're going to be using generative tools. Are we going to be using as many people per project? Or just how are you thinking of, say, the next 10 years in the software engineering world?
Well, that's the billion-dollar question. And there's no doubt in my mind that LLMs are going to have a massive impact. Already are. And we're still early days. That's maybe one of the big meta lessons that I've learned in my career is you see something and you're like, oh man, this is going to transform everything. And yes, it might in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Things always take longer than you think. So I think we're at the beginning, not even the middle of any sort of impact on what we currently are calling AI. And even with what we've got now, the low-level coding, the concept of building a team of an architect and a couple senior developers, and each senior developer has a team of 2 or 3 coders. I'm not so sure we need 2 or 3 coders, but at least the state of the art, vibe coding and all this other stuff, all of which I've been actively working on and using. Boy, you really have to know what you're doing, because the sometimes your coding agent is going to create and save you hours of time, and sometimes it'll be the dumbest, less than junior developer you can imagine, and you need to back out whatever it just did because it was horrible. I was just reading an article Kent Beck wrote about exactly the same phenomenon, where these LLMs sometimes make these big strategic decisions way too early, before you even understand which architecture you should be choosing. And yet they will make dumb coding mistakes that also limit your ability to go forward. Anyway, from a strategic perspective, though, there's no doubt in my mind that if your job is coding, that's not a good job to have. But if your job is translating business requirements into meaningful software solutions, which has a lot of jargon, but hopefully the listener understands what I'm saying, right? It's like understand the business and understand the technology and figure out how to connect those together in a meaningful way that actually helps solve the problem. I don't think the LLMs are going to be doing that anytime soon, right?
Yeah. Right.
But like if your expertise is, I'll pick on CSS because I'm not a CSS person. But all of a sudden, all of my code or UIs look so much better because the AIs can do CSS pretty darn well.
Yeah.
If I'm creating a professional consumer grade app, I'm still going to hire a professional. If I'm creating a line of business app that needs to look decent, why would I hire somebody? The LLMs can do that for me, right? So that's an example of a code level. It's just such a commoditized problem now. All of a sudden, that it's transformative, and I don't think we're quite there yet with C# or Java or Go. The less mainstream your programming language, the worse they are too. I've been trying to do some stuff with Lua. It's almost hopeless. There's just not enough body of knowledge on some of these lesser known languages as compared to Python or C#, where there's most of the stuff on GitHub is written in these handful of languages, and then the AIs are really good at them. So
because there's a lot of material there.
Yeah. So I think the AI thing is a big deal. I think AI obviously is going to. We're also at the point where we don't yet really understand how AI is going to integrate into like business software. The primary entry point for all of this appears to be, I'm going to chat with the AI.
Yeah.
Which I get that, but what happens when we actually start integrating AI behind the scenes? And I think we're just even scratching the surface of that and don't yet understand how that's going to unfold. And that's going to be exciting. I mean, this is what I'm talking about with this potential, right? That's going to be exciting. And I think there's a whole ton of infrastructure stuff that goes along with this too, because the cost of invoking public, SaaS AIs, the amount of tokens, you can chew up a lot of money really, really fast. Especially, and sometimes you're doing such trivial stuff that you could have been doing it on your own server or even on your own phone with a local small language model. And there too, I don't think we don't have a basis for good or bad practices, patterns, anti-patterns. It's all too new and it's all too fluid. But I think that'll settle out. Right. At some point, we'll be like, we were spending $1 million a year with AWS, but turns out we only needed $10,000 a year because we were able to run so much of our workload on our 6-core multi-gigabyte supercomputers we have in our pockets.
Yeah. Right. Just plug. And if you need a few terabytes of space, just plug in a USB drive and you've got the space for the model file.
Exactly. I mean, there's just a lot of lessons to be learned. And so this is, like everybody, this is an awful lot of my current focus. While at the same time understanding that the biggest challenge most organizations face is that they have massive amounts of legacy software that whatever it might be running on, it might be written in VB6 or it might be in COBOL or Fortran or Java or whatever. And it's like, okay, we need to modernize this.
Right.
Just earlier this year, we were at VS Live in Las Vegas, and the hotel check-in system was just a monstrosity. Clunky, horrible user experience, super slow. I mean, it was just, and so we were all laughing about this because we're like, okay, here we are learning about AI and cloud and all of this, cutting edge, super modern stuff. And the hotel that's hosting the conference really needs our help.
Right.
And you see this all in real life. You see this all over the place where it's like if you just peer behind the screen when you're interacting with a business, and see what it is that the poor employee has to go through in their UI. And you're like, oh man, and so is AI going to magically solve that? Heavens no. Not on your life, right? There's just so much stuff that needs to be updated and modernized, and that's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah. Well, you have so much perspective of decades gone by that you can kind of predict the future. As we kind of close up, what advice would you give for, let's say, your past senior engineer self, your past maybe first team lead role self? You're not learning how to program; you're learning how to guide a small group of programmers.
I think a couple of things. One is, don't treat it like it's a progression of your technical career. Understand that leading a team and ultimately, hopefully, managing a team and that's a career path all by itself. And so don't look askance at reading books on business and how to manage and motivate people. Go get Daniel Pink's books or other people, but take it serious. Don't just I've been this super developer and now I've become a super architect and now I'm leading a team, and so I will continue to be a super technology person. It's a career choice, right? If you want to stay as a super technology person, that's a career path. If you want to become an effective leader of people, that too is a career path. And you can do both, and I have, but it's a dance. But yeah, absolutely take it seriously, and take the time to understand that different people are motivated by different things. And that's where I come back to Daniel Pink, because some of his content and material is so good at crystallizing that concept. And not everybody's like you. That's what I would tell me, right? It's
Sure.
like, not everybody's like you, dude. Some people have other motivations or interests in life, and you have to understand those in order to keep everybody motivated and happy and productive.
And you mentioned if you love the code, then you might have some problems. I'm reminded of the progression of transportation from horse and wagon and to trains to trucks and now 18-wheelers and ships. If you identified yourself as a not the Pony Express, the horse and wagon delivering packages or delivering things, or even if you were, I'm a railroad company, we transport things, and now shipping and trucking, versus the people who said no, I'm in the transportation business, and as things continue to evolve, I move things. I move really important things. And same thing with software. It's we do code a certain way now, which is very different in the mid 90s and is different every decade, and it's going to be different next decade. But we're in the business of actually making computers do stuff so that people's lives are better.
Well said. Yes, that's absolutely right. And we have, again, like you said, regardless of the tools we're using, there's a mindset to this, a way of thinking that not everybody has or likes. Makes some people feel very uncomfortable to think the way that good software people think. And that, I'm not worried that the LLMs are going to overcome that. They might automate all of our underlying tooling. But yeah, what you just said, this understanding of the way that computers think or act versus the way that people think and act, and trying to reconcile those, that's a very human thing. And and it's where a lot of the fun comes in. There's no doubt.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Rocky, thanks for coming back on the show, and it was great catching up with you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely a pleasure to be here.
Oh, all my pleasure. And until next time, dear listener, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure and DevOps podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Visit our sponsor, ClearMeasure, at www.clearmeasure.com. And on behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.